Second graders, I'm back today with big hair. I don't know what happened. I put mousse in it when it was wet, and it's big. It's just big hair today. That's okay. So I'm back with something exciting. The new Wayside School book! Yay! Wayside School, Beneath the Cloud of Doom. And it is an AR test. It's 3 points. All right, here's what the jacket cover says. Welcome back to Wayside School. Your favorite students and teachers have been waiting for you. That includes Sherry, who loves her striped and spotted umbrella more than anything. Kathy, who has a bad case of opposite-itis. Jason, who has to read the longest book in the world. And the rest in Mrs. Jewell's class in the 30th story who are busily collecting toenail clippings. They all need to prepare for the ultimate test, despite the cloud of doom looming above them. More than 9 million readers have laughed at the clever and hilarious stories of Wayside School, but they've never seen these stories before. So what are you waiting for? Don't wait any longer. Let's go. 30 chapters. Not very long, though, so I think I can plug this out in a week or two. Okay. Table of contents. 30 chapters. This is a note from the author. Remember, in my last video, at the end, I pointed out that this book just came out, like within the last month. And the last book that I just read, The Third Wayside School, was published in 1995. That was 25 years ago. That's the year I graduated from high school. I feel so old. Not really, I'm still young. All right, but here we go, a note from the author. This is the 4th book about Wayside School. I wrote the first one, Sideways Stories from Wayside School, more than 40 years ago. So the very first one even came out longer. I was little when it was written, over 40 years ago. I was just barely a baby. I'm a lot older now, but in my heart, I'm still Lewis, the yard teacher, passing out the balls and playing with the kids at recess. To fully enjoy this book, you should read the other 3 first, wait 40 years, and then read this one, or you can just read it now. I gotta tell you guys, I'm not gonna wait 40 years to read this one because I'll be in my 80s then, and I might not even be here, who knows. Hopefully I will be, but you never know. So I'm gonna read it now. And if you want to, listen along. All right, chapter 1, The Bells of Wayside. It is very important that the children at Wayside School know the bell system. The first bell in the morning sounds like this: whoop, 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 whoop. When they hear it, they know that they have 16 minutes to get to class. That's not too difficult for those in Mrs. Hardgrove's class on the 3rd floor. But Wayside School is a 30-story building with 1 room on each floor. So for those who happen to be in Mrs. Jewell's class, way up on the 30th floor, they must be ready on the first whoop. Today Todd was in Mrs. Jewell's class. He was stuck behind a mass of kids outside the building waiting for the doors to open. He jumped up and down trying to see over the heads of those in front of him. If he was late, Mrs. Jewell would put his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. The kids who went to class on the lower floors often dilly-dallied. If Todd got stuck behind a large group of dilly-dalliers, he'd have no chance. Inside the principal's office, Mr. Kidswatter sat behind his enormous desk as he watched the clock. At the moment the second hand reached the number 12, he shrieked into his microphone, whoop, 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 whoop. The doors unlocked and the children stampeded into the building and up the stairs. Todd tried his best to weave his way to the front, but there wasn't a lot of room. 8 minutes later, Mr. Kidswatter tugged on the rope hanging through this hole in the ceiling, and the second bell rang. Clang, 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 clang. Todd counted the clangs. 8. That meant he now had 8 minutes to get to class. 7 or 9 clangs would have meant something completely different. 7 meant a helicopter was landing on the roof. 9 clangs meant a porcupine had entered the building. So far, he had only made it to the 7th floor, but he had finally managed to weave his way past all the dilly-dalliers. There was nothing to slow him down now. When he reached the 18th floor, he heard this sound, ching-a-ling, ching-a-ling, ching-a-ling. Nothing to worry about there. That just meant they were out of donuts in the teacher's lounge. The scary bell was the late bell. It didn't matter where he was. It always sounded like an angry driver was slamming on a car horn right behind him. It made Tad jump every time. He quickly dashed from the 18th to the 20th floor. There was no 19th floor. His legs were sore and he was breathing hard. As he reached the top, just ahead, he could see Joy entering the classroom. "Don't shut the—" Tad shouted. Joy shut the door behind her. "Gazook," said Zach. Sorry, Guzak, said Todd. "Ah!" Guzak said Todd. He was just opening it when the horn blared, as if right behind him. "You're late, Todd," said Mrs. Jules as he entered the classroom. "Write your—" "I know," he said. He wrote his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Other bells rang throughout the day. At noon, the lunch bell kaboinked 3 times. 3 kaboinks meant macaroons and cheese. The bell for recess was just a single ding, but nobody ever missed it. At the end of each day, Mr. Kidswatter would bang a giant gong with a large iron mallet. It was his favorite thing about being principal. Tad sat at his desk, glumly looking at the blackboard. The day had started off badly for him, and it had only gotten worse. There was now a check mark next to his name under the word discipline. Next to that, Mrs. Jules kept adding new homework assignments. Read a book, write a book report, draw a picture. Don't forget your paperclip. History, read pages 55 through 59 and answer questions on pages 61 and 62. Math worksheet, do the even and odd numbered problems. Science, read pages 29 through 34 and do experiment on 37. Todd had a sick feeling in his stomach, and it wasn't just the mac and cheese. In big letters across the top of the blackboard, Mrs. Jules had written, "Ultimate test starts tomorrow." Mrs. Jules had been warning the class about the ultimate test all year. The test would last for 3 days. If he failed, Todd would be sent back to kindergarten. And then he heard it, the most magical bell of all. Ping pong! This bell had only rung once in the history of Wayside School, and nobody knew who rang it, but everybody knew what it meant. All around, kids began cheering and clapping their hands. Shouts of joy could be heard coming from every floor of Wayside School. Todd just sat there in stunned disbelief. It rang again. Ping pong! It was the erase the blackboard bell. Mrs. Jules had no choice. She picked up the eraser. Up and down Wayside School, teachers were doing the same thing. Tad smiled as the homework assignments were wiped away. The ultimate test was canceled. His name was removed from the discipline list, and even the word discipline soon disappeared. Deep in the basement, a man with a black mustache snapped open a black attaché case. Another man, also with a black mustache, placed a small silver ball into the case. A third man, who was bald, put in a solid gold ping pong paddle. Chapter 2, a million. And look at the picture. It's a gross toenail. Ugh. By the time Terrence got to school, he had already kicked 99 different things. It started the moment he woke up. He kicked his bed. He kicked Rocky, his favorite stuffed animal. When he left his bedroom, he kicked the door shut. He kicked the wall as he sat at the kitchen counter and ate cereal. He kicked a table. He kicked 3 chairs. He kicked rocks on the way to school. He kicked the flagpole. Still, as much as Terrence liked to kick things, it would take him his whole life to kick a million things. "How much is a million?" Mrs. Jules asked her class. Ooh, I know, said Mac, stretching his hand high. Mrs. Jules called on Mac. "A million," Mac answered proudly. "Well, yes, I suppose so. I suppose that's correct," said Mrs. Jules. "A million is a million. Anyone else?" John? John lowered his hand. 999,999. He paused and added, +1, he smiled. "Ooh, that's good, John," said Dana, very impressed. "John's really smart," Joe agreed. Terrence wasn't paying attention. His big toe hurt from all the kicking. His toenail was too long. Sherry, who had been sleeping at her desk, suddenly awoke and said, 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. She rested her head on her red and blue overcoat and went back to sleep. "Is that right, Mrs. Jules?" asked Jason. Said Mrs. Jules as she tried to multiply all of Sherry's tens. "Well, if Sherry said it, it must be right." "Arithmetic makes my brain numb," said Damien. "That's why they're called numbers," said DJ. Terrence's big toe throbbed in pain. He couldn't think about anything else. There's really one way to understand just how big a million is, said Mrs. Jules, and it's not by using arithmetic. We need to collect a million somethings. Dollars, exclaimed Joy. Everyone cheered. They liked that idea. Then we could have the biggest party ever, said Dee. We're not collecting $1 million, said Mrs. Jules. Any other ideas? Pumpkins, suggested Dana. Everyone cheered Dana's idea too, but not as loudly as Joy's. I don't think 1 million pumpkins would fit in the school, said Mrs. Jules. We need something small and not too expensive. Stephen suggested little pieces of paper. Nobody cheered. Boring, sang Kathy. Stephen felt hurt, but deep down he had to admit that collecting bits of paper wouldn't have been a whole lot of fun. Ron suggested mud, but that too was rejected. It's a good idea, Ron, said Mrs. Jules, but you can't count mud. Why not? He asked. There's no such thing as one mud or two muds, explained Mrs. Jules. Why not? Ron asked again. I don't know, Mrs. Jules had to admit. Terrence couldn't take it any longer. He took off his shoe, then his sock. One desk over, Rondi stared at him, horrified. Terrence's toenail was bent out of shape, and it had turned black and blue. He opened his desk and took out his pair of safety scissors. Then, crossing one leg over the other, he started snipping. You can't cut your toenail in class, said Rondi. It's against the rules. Who says, said Terrence. It was one tough toenail, and the scissors weren't all that sharp. Mrs. Jules, called Rondi, Terrence is cutting his toenail right in class. Some kids laughed. Some said, gross. Terrence pushed hard on the scissors. At last, a piece of his toenail fell free. His toe instantly felt better. Terrence, come up here now, demanded Mrs. Jules, and bring your toenail with you. Terrence picked up the clipping off the floor, one shoe off, one shoe on. He hobbled to the front of the room. Give me that, Mrs. Jules demanded. Terrence dropped the nail clipping into his teacher's outstretched hand. You're a genius, Terrence, said Mrs. Jules. She held his nail clipping high in the air. That's one, she announced. 999,999 to go. They're collecting toenails. Yikes. I don't think I'd do that at school. That's gross. All right, let's have the code word be toenail. Send me toenail in a private message, and I will give you a point of extra credit on whatever assignment that you need that extra point on. See you later. Bye.